Welcome to NiceTalk, the crypto show by NiceHash, where we feature expert commentary from around the industry. My name is Joe, and I'm Chief Marketing Officer at NiceHash. Joining me today is Marko, our mining hardware manager. And our special guest, we are very delighted to announce, is Wilke Trei from LolMiner, the mastermind behind LolMiner. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got started with mining?
Oh, how I get started with mining. Well, if I'm really thinking about it, it all started in this kind of gold rush in 2017, I guess it was. So from crypto perspective, I'm rather a crypto noob still. Well, 4 years now, but anyways. Well, it was a time for me personally where a lot of things in my life kind of have settled. Yeah, kids were born and house was built, and so well, you start roaming a little bit around and getting interested into new stuff because you just have the time for that. And well, crypto got my attention somewhat in early 17, so it was luckily before all these huge pumps. But then, well. I've kind of got interested in all this technology and the opportunities and wanted to somewhat invest in it, but didn't have that much money to actually invest. Not so much left. So, well, mining was a kind of nice opportunity. Well, with the own graphic card you've got at home, and well, your energy provider literally giving you a kind of credit. Yeah, you can get crypto now, can spend the energy now, but pay later for it. And well, that was kind of the start in 2017, mostly mining a little bit of Zcash. Well, because that was just the hype time of that currency back then. Yeah. Of course, also did a lot of other stuff, trying to trade a little bit, but that turns out I'm a rather bad trader. And well, also did some of these typical beginner mistakes in the very beginning, putting some like 2ETH into some kind of crypto Ponzi, for example. This beginner mistakes you always kind of do.
Yeah.
Or at
Probably
least
some ICOs. ICOs were popular at the time.
Yeah, were very popular, but I only joined one or two because most of the projects, well, ICOs were later that year. And at that point, I already learned some stuff and also learned, well, that not every project that's shining bright actually is a good one. So, yeah.
Exactly.
Very true. So can you tell us a bit more about how you got the inspiration to start your own miner, to create your own miner?
Well, that was later than in 2017, so the very same year. I've got a personal background. I've studied computational math, so also already with a kind of background into computer optimization stuff. And because I was a miner myself, was kind of interested at that moment about, okay, how does all of this actually work? Yeah, and well, you've studied this stuff, you weren't that bad during your study. Isn't it something, if anyone can build this, shouldn't you also be able to do so? And so I've especially looked up how did Equihash, so the proof of work behind Zcash, work. And then found, luckily, a coin that was, well, somewhere placed 200, 300 in the coin market cap list at that date. And yeah, then just started, okay, can you try implementing this proof of work on your own? It took almost like 3 or 4 months until I had the very very, very basic first version ready. It was for me like more like a research project. Yeah, can you do this on your own? Are you able to yourself find a valid share? And well, this was how it all started. I need to say it kind of escalated a little bit after that. Yeah.
Good story. So why did you name your miner LolMiner? I mean, as far as I know, Lolliedieb means Lolliedieb in German. Is that true?
Yeah, that is true. Well, the name LolMiner just came from the first 3 letters of my nicknames. There's not that much story behind it. Well, the nickname itself had its origin almost 20 years, 19 years ago, when we were like end years in high school, and we were a small group of students playing StarCraft. And well, till then we just, I can't even remember what nickname I had till then, but well, we weren't that successful in playing. But one day we had a game against some kids from Asia, and well, that single one turned out to be particularly good. And some of my friends just said, "Oh, hey, you stole that kid his lollipop." And that was kind of the origin of that of that nickname. So really years ago, and somehow I did stick to that. Yeah. Well,
cool.
it is kind of unique. You don't find that one too often, so I was okay with that.
Yeah, fair enough.
And I mean, today with the miner, I need to say some people already told me, well, we first didn't really use your software because we considered it to be a joke. Well,
I remember the first time I saw it. Yeah, I also saw just the LOL part.
I saw it sometime to change the name actually, but on the other hand, well, no, it is kind of a brand for itself, so it feels a little bit hard than changing the name. And also on the other hand, other kids today playing a game that's shortcutted LOL, and they take it pretty serious. So
Yeah.
Exactly. So is it just you who maintains the miner, or do you have other people who are involved as well?
Well, when it comes to coding, I'm mostly doing that myself. So I had the one or two times where I actually did contact other miner developers if one should somewhat team up, but somehow that never really happened. I've got 1-2 people, Jay, if you're listening, hi, that are now the last year helping me giving community support and doing some testing, because it turned out that this is taking quite a lot of time, and I really like more to deep dive into the codes, and so I'm quite happy. I've got some people helping me with that, but most of the coding stuff I'm still doing on my own. Yeah.
And how does your day work like? Like a lot of code tweaks or hardware testing? What's the biggest chunk of the work you do?
Well, it is. You mean how does the day look like?
How does the day-to-day? Yeah.
Well, it isn't really a 9-to-5 job. Well, as it never is when you're freelancing something. It kind of already starts very early in the morning. The first thing I'm doing is opening Telegram and have a look if I've got some messages from the Far East or Eastern Russia. Yeah, those people usually are up more early than me. Having a look if they have got something, or found something, some bugs, for example, I urgently need to solve for them. Well, then it's usually breakfast, bringing kids to school. And well, after then, the actual coding time really starts, and it's really a mix. You don't do every day exactly the same stuff. Some days are just brainstorming, okay, what's the next thing to do? Some days are then code work. Most of the time you're actually debugging. Because as you can imagine, when you're running a mining algorithm, you need to be 100% precise. Yeah. If you're just one bit off in any place, well, then you'll end up with false solutions or other problems. And so really a lot of time is going into the testing and the debugging stuff because you need to be 100% sure your code is exactly doing what it's supposed to do. Yeah.
Okay, maybe just one off-topic question. Are you only working on LolMiner right now, or is this your like part-time job?
Well, it is now my full-time job. It had been a part-time job until about second half of last year. So in about September, it was my full-time job. I've still got a second part-time job besides, still having my old job, but only with reduced working hours at the university, at the local university here, maintaining a big computer cluster. Yeah. But I'm not allowed to mine there, unfortunately. I'd love to. We got some pretty nice Nvidia server cards here, but oh well. Yeah. Not allowed to test there. What a pity.
So let's talk a little bit more about the basics of mining, like what actually is happening when you're mining. So maybe we can start off with what is a job, a mining job.
What's a mining job? Oof. Okay, and how detailed do you need that explained?
Let's just start with like a basic overview.
Okay, very basic overview. Well, I can try to explain it like I would explain it to my son. It's like 5 or 6 years.
That would be great. That would be the best explanation.
He's soon turned 7. So, well, if I'm going to explain to him what is the job that needs to be done, consider you've got a room full of Lego bricks. Yeah. And I'm kind of building small robots that have the property they're resorting those bricks. But unfortunately, those robots only got kind of one function. Yeah, they are always doing exactly the same order of operations in that room. So what is mining doing is kind of you throw in a bunch of Lego bricks, let this robot operate, and have a look, okay, what's the result of it? And our goal is to find a kind of initial configuration for the room, having it all sorted to one side and the other side is completely cleaned up. Unfortunately, you really need to test a lot of configurations. So in that sense, yeah, I'm kind of the robot builder, and the miners are those providing the rooms and trying to have as much rooms as anyhow possible. So they can test a lot of configurations and let the robot do this work. So this is pretty similar to what mining is. Yeah, you're testing a lot of nonces to find a valid block header with the property of having yeah, a low or no other way around, a high difficulty. So all the bits in the result, well, need to give a large number that is low enough in the end.
Okay, so when you think you found the correct solution and send it back to the node, that's a share.
Well,
maybe you can tell more about mining share. What's a mining share?
A little bit more than that. Well, most mining shares actually are kind of useless when it comes to the perspective of creating a block. Mining share is something, yeah, when you have a solution that is already good, but not really good enough. Yeah, when the this is kind of made. And the key word here is a difficulty. Each blockchain has a certain difficulty set that allows you, okay, when you found a solution hitting that difficulty or better, then you're allowed to attach the next block to the chain. Yeah. And well, whom I'm explaining that, you know that as well as me, but well, for the audience.
Yeah, it's for our users,
well,
of course.
For a mining pool now decides, it's not enough for me just to find the blocks. Yeah, then you could also do some solo mining. Instead, they need somehow to measure, okay, how much or how fast are the connected clients? Yeah, just because they somehow need to fairly share the block rewards afterwards, and that is done by the speed the miners actually provide. So what they do is they don't send the miners the difficulty to create a new block because, well, that will be far too high and most clients never would actually find one. Instead, they're sending kind of a lower difficulty. And so a share is something already matching this lower difficulty. So the mining pools can estimate the speed of your software, of your mining rig by the rate they're getting this low difficulty shares. Translating to our Lego bricks robot, it would be a kind of solution. Okay, we've got the first half square meter on the one side cleaned up, but it's not completed yet. It's not as much as we needed. Yeah, and then taking a photo of that and sending it to grandma. Well, we started. That's a share.
Yeah. Maybe it's worth noting that, as far as I know, shares are the price of the share. I mean, how much you get paid per share is dependent on the difficulty of the share. So a share with higher difficulty will be worth more than a share with lower difficulty.
Yeah, that's quite connected to the difficulty the pool sends. The pool is interested in getting a good record about how fast the miner actually is. So, of course, it can send different difficulties to different miners and then putting some weight on them, kind of balancing the rate they're getting shares, the network traffic they want to have, with the accuracy of the measurement. Yeah, the more shares you got, the more accurate the measurement will be. You could set
on the pool side.
On the pool side.
That's why on the pool side the hash rate like jumps up and down.
Exactly.
It's not very stable.
Well, and when you're a home miner with just 1 or 2 GPUs, well, then obviously you need a lower difficulty to set the same amount of shares as someone running a big farm with 3 or 4 gigahash. Yeah, that's kind of the peak some people have at home. Or the really large farms that go into the tens to 100s of gigahash scale. Yeah, they are obviously running at a much higher difficulty. Well, just because, let's say, having one share every 15 to 20 seconds is perfectly fine for the pool. Yeah, that's more than enough to get a good picture of what's going on the other side.
Can you explain for users what exactly happens when user starts mining? Like, what starts happening with his computer?
Well, the very first thing that's always happening then is the computer starts establishing a connection to the pool, grabbing what exactly worked to be worked on. And for the most algorithms, this then just ends up in some OpenCL or CUDA kernel launches. Okay, this is our work we got from the pool. That's the difficulty we want to mine on. Okay, fire and go. And then, well, most of the CPU during that time is idle, just waiting for either new jobs on the one side arriving so it can update the GPU work, or collecting stuff from the GPU that's spinning like almost all the time. Once we have found something that potentially could make a share, we usually do a kind of CPU check then. So verifying if everything is okay with the share, or if we have something defect. And then again, putting in a message over the network. Okay, this is the nonce we found. Please recognize this share. That's mostly what's happening behind. So
Okay, I just have another question regarding. So when a CPU checks the share, if there were multiple shares, like really fast shares, would that put a lot of load on the CPU?
yeah, if you've got it,
or is that load very minimal?
well, it depends. Let's say the usual runtime, let's say of a mining CPU, like in Intel Atom Celeron, yeah, something very slow. For an NiceHash share, it needs about 4 to 5 milliseconds checking time. So, well, and this is then just using one of the CPU cores. So as long as you stay like below 30, 40 shares per second, then it starts getting a little bit close on the CPU capacities. But as long as you're above that, it's not really an issue. So because you just need to imagine the scale of all of this. Yeah, the GPU is checking like 30, 40, 50 million shares, no, not shares, nonces per second. Yeah, and the CPU just need to validate one of them. Yeah, so that's okay.
Yep. Cool. So let's talk a little bit more about the actual development of the miner. So which environment do you find easier to work with, AMD or Nvidia, or why? Which one and why?
Oh, that's easy. So usually Nvidia is a little bit more easier. AMD is a little bit more complicated, but that mostly comes is because of the tools provided. At least when you're doing CUDA, it's usually a little bit easier to really get a good performance out of the box, just with the provided tools. On AMD, actually, their own OpenCL compiler, at least the old ones when I started, weren't really good. That changed quite a lot, I need to say, recently with the introduction of ROCm, because that compilers are much better and also allow some stuff like inlining assembly and inlining assembly code to overcome the OpenCL standard itself. Yeah, when you're coding in pure OpenCL, of course, it doesn't make much difference if you're running AMD or Nvidia. Yeah, just take the pure code and sending it to the GPU and see what comes out of it. The problem is you're then restricted to what the language provides to you. So some functionality of the GPU is completely missing when you just stick to the standard. That's different, of course, with CUDA, because often new instruction sets that are provided for the new GPUs that are shipped with these new GPUs are also provided within CUDA rather quickly. On OpenCL, this latency is much, much longer until something finds its way into the standard. So you're more forced, inserting own assembly code. And the very old AMD compilers were not able to do that at all. Yeah, you weren't able to inline, so you need to rely on external tools and then really code very close to the middle because, when you're not able to inline assembly, you need to do it like all in assembly. Yeah, that making it harder. On the other hand, I have the feeling on AMD, you got a little bit more control when you're coding so close. For example, like allocating registers on the GPU. That's something where you have more control over an AMD code, really optimizing it to the detail. But you need to come quite a long way to get there. The first 1.5 years of LolMiner, I almost didn't do that. I just tried to write codes that the compilers like somehow. Yeah, because it needs quite a lot of detail knowledge, and also it changes from GPU generation to generation. Yeah, an assembly code working for AMD Vega doesn't work for the Big Navi generation. Yeah, so
as far as I know, the Nvidia is far more consistent. when it comes
It
to
is more
CUDA?
consistent. At least now, at least in theory, my Pascal code still could run on Turing and Ampere in theory. In fact, I'm having a little bit different code just because of the optimization side. Yeah, new code variant worked better on them, while the other code variant worked better on the Pascal cards. So, well, I still wrote two codes, but in general, when you want to do a kind of quick release, okay, here's some new card, it is much quicker having a reasonable release on Nvidia than on AMD. At least till now.
Maybe what's the most like challenging part when it comes to optimizing the miner?
Oh, there is a lot of challenging parts in that. First of all, obviously having an idea at all. Okay, what do I need to change to make this quicker? What could be done? What haven't I tried yet? Yeah, the basic questions. Recently, what I need to say is what's bugging me quite a lot is the correlation between what your own testings were doing and how it then turns out to work in the wild. Just for example, I've had some code that did quite well on my Nvidia LHR cards. And then also in our testing, it was perfectly fine. But then later on, we observed, even though this code is correct and it is fast, it was not a really good choice to ship it to the miners because we saw some people running with very, very high memory overclocks. And it turned out this code on the very high overclocks produced more invalids, was more unstable than the previous one. And this is something you don't necessarily detect when you're testing. At least not because, well, your own test rig has some standard set and you're always testing kind of against the same configuration to make sure your tests are kind of consistent. But then when it comes to some strange hardware configurations or some people running extreme clocks, well, then it could be the older code that was in fact a tiny bit slower, like 0.1 mega hash missing. It's actually the better choice for them because it is more stable. And this is kind of very challenging. Some things you really only recognize when it's shipped to the miners, and sadly not before.
Yeah, makes sense. So can you tell us a bit about drivers? Drivers can often be issues for mining. So can you tell us what kind of impact they have when you're actually coding? Is that problematic?
Depends a little bit. Most of the time they're not that problematic because you kind of try to run the same kernel code across multiple drivers just to make it consistent somewhat, to have a consistent performance for all of the users. There's some rare situations where the actual driver matters. Most of the time recently with Nvidia LHR cards, that's something where we observed, okay, the one driver allows us a little bit more speed than the other one, just because the lock is working different. And there you need to put a bit more attention on the driver version. And of course, what's always a thing is the compatibility. Especially with AMD cards. AMD is kind of known for sometimes just changing their kernel format. And so we had a strange situation, for example, when RX 6700 was released. It did work perfectly well with the drivers that were out that time with the kernel we did build for the bigger Navi cards, for the 6800. Yeah. It was working very well. And then later on, they released a new driver version where the 6800 was still working with exactly the same kernel, but the 6700 stopped working with exactly the same kernel. And that was kind of the situation where you saw a lot of miners releasing new versions fixed compatibility with newer AMD drivers. Just because, well, we really sat there and said, why? Why are you forcing us to provide new kernels? The old ones with the old drivers were still working perfectly. Sometimes we're just shaking head, okay, why they did that now? Was it really necessary?
Probably a new developer in AMD.
I don't really know why that had happened, but it's not only a problem for mining. It's wherever you have binary kernels shipped to your customers, just because you don't want your kernel codes to be easily leaked to the public. All of this software also, when you do image, some kind of picture processing and stuff like that, or video processing, and they, in the case they got native kernels, they also now need to do a patch for these newer drivers. So sometimes that can be very annoying. Yeah.
Is there a specific algorithm that's easy to work with, like for someone who wants to start developing its own miner? What algorithm is the most simple one to work with, from your experience?
The most simple one. I likely go with what is simple. Well, in fact, Equihash isn't that complicated. But now from the more recent ones, I'd say stuff like Blake 2V, or now this new from optical Bitcoin, this heavy hash, for example, heavy hash algorithm.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Those are algorithms that are rather simple from their design. Unfortunately, most of them that are so simple are also very core heavy, and so likely at some point will be run on FPGAs or ASICs. But to get a first idea what's going on there, that could be a good start. There are a lot of interesting algorithms out there. So also ETH in fact isn't that complicated. What makes it complicated in the end is that the level across the miners is very, very high. Yeah, to get a good performance out of it, you need to spend a lot of time making it good. But for an initial code, just testing, okay, can I get this working? It's quite well suited.
So another thing that's curious about is your code is all signed. That's one of the reasons why we included it into the NiceHash miner. Can you comment a bit on why someone would not wish to do this with their code? A lot of developers don't wish to come forward, and I think it's really great that you come and talk, and it's fascinating what you're talking about. But a lot of people don't want to come forward with their identities. Why do you think they would be afraid?
Hard to say. Well, Marko had bugged me quite a long time until I finally did that code signing. I was also thinking about that. Well, in the end, it was kind of, okay, I've got not that much to lose because my real name was also Googleable before. And, well, but of course, you're giving kind of a part of your identity. And, well, let's say, most of the miners today are kind of developed in small projects like mine. Yeah, okay, I'm now only a single developer, but also all the others. If you look to, I guess, Gminer are also 2 people or 3. Team Redminer 2 people. T-Rex is only 1 as far as I know. All of those aren't big companies. Yeah, so you can't really register your certificate to a company, but rather need to stand there with your own name, your own home address. At least if you shy of the work registering something for that. And I'm not sure. I guess just a guess. Some think, okay, I've got not that much to gain. The miner already is running fine everywhere. So why should I? Kind of compromise my privacy This way they're acting now. They can make this claim or move much better by just disappearing at some point. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
So
I think it's very important for the industry to like get more secure. That's something NiceHash tries to do.
Yeah.
Get mining software more secure, because as could happen with any software, we warned that a lot, that anonymous developers could just like plant a bomb long time ago in their software, and people are whitelisting its software, and you never know what happens, maybe.
Yeah, for
sometime.
me, security always was a kind of important point too. That was in the end also why I said, okay, my name already can be connected with the miner. Okay, here I stand with my name that this software is okay. Also, the software is kind of designed, if you turn the log function off, then for most algorithms, it can work just with turning any write permissions off. So you can run it on a hard drive without it's writing anything. That was kind of important. Also, it doesn't connect any other servers than just the Stratum connection for the user and my fee connection. Those are the two that are necessary, but nothing more. Yeah, you can Wireshark it. It doesn't send anything else. Of course, the fee connection today is mostly encrypted, but that is also kind of in the interest of the users. We just had that in China, that a lot of people were concerned about, okay, can my network traffic kind of traced? Because it's a great firewall now filtering miner traffic. And that was a concern. Okay, if my traffic is safe, is also the fee connection safe? Yeah, because that also could give the authorities a hint. And that is an important topic. Yeah,
I think that Microsoft is big part. I mean, all antivirus softwares have a big deal here, because it's everyone is blocking miner software. Yeah. I think that's a bad thing, because people are then whitelisting it and just making a like free way for everybody to play around.
At this point, maybe a small anecdote. My very first versions of LolMiner were so badly written that not even the antivirus detected it as miner software. That was in the very beginning, and the first time my antivirus told me, we found an instance of Win32 coin miner, I was kind of happy. Okay, I'm taking that as a quality certificate for myself, because the very first versions were really badly written. That evolved a lot since then. They were also cross-compiled. Yeah, my very first Windows versions were kind of unstable because I did develop them completely in Linux and then did just a cross-compile to Windows. And that turned out not to be that good choice. Yeah. Starting with my second year then, I started developing Windows software using Microsoft's own compilers. And then it got better, much better.
Okay. I have another question about optimizing the algorithms we talked about before. How far are we to 100% theoretical speed on ETH? Like, how optimized is that algorithm generally?
Across the popular cards, quite a lot, especially if you think about AMD RX 580 with timing mod, same with 5700 and the new big Navi cards. On all of them, we are above, let's say, 96% of the theoretical output. Similar for Nvidia Ampere, the full hash rate cards. There we are also closing in above 96% of having hash rate compared with the theoretical output the memory could have. Well, we had one or two miners claiming even more hash rate than theoretical possible. but that are rather rare occurrences. Most are not that that bold on their claims. There was this. No, I'm not naming it now.
Yeah, of course.
Well, for other cards, it looks different, especially if you think about AMD Vega cards. There, for example, the Team Red Miner is like 5 to 10% quicker than any other software. And even that one is not reaching the theoretical available bandwidth. So not really sure what needs to be done to actually achieve that. But this is kind of still a miracle. Other cards, well, seem to suffer a little bit from the memory controller, like Nvidia Turing generation. Usually, 2080 should be much quicker than it actually is. But there's somewhat room left, but I'm not really sure if it's accessible for this kind of algorithm, or if it's just a thing that the way the memory controllers work is not that compatible with the algorithm. It could also be a memory timing thing. Yeah, on Turing, you see memory timing can no longer be really modified, and so the performance there is actually lagging behind
it's dropping.
What could be. While on Pascal generation, you had a similar theoretic bandwidth to hash ratio in the beginning, but later on came the memory timing hacks, and then it went up. Yeah, and for Ampere, they kind of fixed that and using much more sharp default timings, and that helps a lot. So, yeah, how close are we to 100%? Well, for the popular cards, we're pretty close. There can be found maybe 0.5%, I think, plus minus.
So the next question from that would be LHR. So what's it like to work with the LHR cards? How challenging is it? I imagine it's quite difficult when you're working with these, but when you do achieve something and you do crack one, it must be a pretty good feeling, right?
Well, it is. It had kind of an up and down. The very first hack we found for those cards on the 3060 back then was running 2 miners in parallel and recognizing, okay, my ETH hash rate almost doesn't go down. Then we started throttling the second miner running in parallel, making it slower, and so, okay, our ETH hash rate is actually going up. What is that? Yeah, we're now mining something small in parallel to ETH. Both are hashing, and ETH is quicker than locked. Okay, so that means we need to be unlocked. And additionally, got some work done by the second kernel. Yeah, and that was back then the hint how to work with it. So obviously they needed to be busy with something different than ETH or with some additional instruction to make them unlock. Today it almost is a little bit like handling with a razor blade. Yeah, you really try to pin this edge. Okay, I'm just not locking, because then you're getting the most hash rate out of it. Yeah, spend as few time as anyhow possible on whatever you use to distract the driver from. Do not recognize this. And of course, that is very uplifting the moment you found a good solution. Of course, it also can be kind of I also had my bad moments with it when I thought, okay, I've got a good code, ship that to the miners, and then it turns out, okay, for most of the miners, it doesn't work that well. Shit happens. Also, of course, during the development, I had this hack for the 3060 very, very early on the old drivers. Then I installed the new drivers and recognized, okay, it doesn't work. Did tweak 1 or 2 small parameters. It still doesn't work. Okay, screw it. Obviously, they fixed it somewhat. That was my thought. And then later on, I saw NB Miner doing the first move for the version 2 cards. And I thought, okay, what the heck did they do? Why did they get it to work and me not? And well, in the end, it turned out my Y1 code already was quite good. I just needed to turn the parameters more into the extreme, because the version 1 codes all did aim to almost 80% of the speed. But actually, we then started with 69 to 70% on the newer drivers. So I just didn't do enough. And the day I found that out, I was sitting there, oh fuck. I could have had the solution much earlier. Yeah, I could have had this 3 months ago. But now I'm a little bit late to the party. Well, but of course it is somewhat interesting. It's also binding a lot of your attention because this is a domain where there's still a lot of stuff to gain. Yeah, we had gains of 1 to 2% from one code generation to the next one. And this is, of course, much more interesting than writing the 30th, 40th iteration of your NiceHash code again to gain 0.02%. There's much more gain in it. On the other hand, it obviously binds own resources. I urgently need to do something about my AMD codes. I'm now telling exactly that for half a year. It's about time they get a little bit more attention. Yeah.
And what does the ideal algorithm consist of? GPU algorithm. So for aspiring developers out there.
So you mean if I now would set up a new coin and adding a proof of work, how should that look like? Or
yes.
First of all, it's unlikely I would launch a coin today, just because we recently saw there are a lot of projects with their own blockchain out there, but more popular recently are those that are just building upon an already existing platform. Anyways, for an ideal proof of work today, I would kind of make it again memory heavy when it targets GPUs, because when you're too compute heavy, you're opening the door very much for FPGAs and if it's compute only, for ASICs. So again, very memory heavy. Then I would take, when you have memory access, then 64 better 128 bytes chunks. Just because else you're running into a situation like with ergo mining, where you can't really saturate the bandwidth of the GPUs, because they have their cache lines, technical property. You always need to fetch a complete cache line. And when you're below 46, for some architectures, 128 bytes in a row, then you're actually wasting bandwidth. And so to balance AMD and Nvidia cards, I'd go for something that's similar to NiceHash, but maybe with a modification to have about as many write as read accesses, with the idea that then the LHR limitation don't trigger. Yeah, we tested that. I did a kind of inverse NiceHash that instead of reading the memory addresses, was writing to exactly the same addresses. Yeah, and then to test, okay, what happens? Yeah, like writing random elements of the deck all of the time. And if you do so, the luck doesn't trigger. You're almost running at 100% possible speed. So to get around that, I would then mix read and write operations. That has a little bit the drawback that you can't overclock as high, especially the memory, because you're going to run into more defects on the written data on high overclocks than on the read data. So it would cause a little bit less overclock, but and it's a good idea. 128 byte access, read and write equally mixed, then you're fine. That's the direction to take.
Let's see if that comes out. It'll be interesting. So let's talk a little bit about the future of GPU mining. You're talking about ETH. So we all know Ethereum going to proof of stake. As a developer of software, how do you see this play out? Do you think it's going to be really challenging, or do you think it will play out in natural course?
The question is now, what is the natural course in that sense? I don't think we have that sample size yet to really tell what could be the natural way. Well, I think some minor developers were just as mentioned before, do this claim or move and then suddenly disappear. And because now it's quite natural. Now is the time for all of us where we make the most money out of it, and it certainly will go down a little bit afterwards. Others, I guess me included, will likely then try to do other algorithms, or maybe, before having the recent success with LolMiner, I was also kind of then helping some projects doing code work. Like, I wrote a reference miner for Beam back then. I did help Zcash, today Flux network, with doing a hard fork and stuff like that. So maybe we will just work on other things, and I could imagine doing that again. But also moving to other algorithms, of course, creating new codes and trying to catch those GPU miners that are still left. Yeah.
And what's your prediction about all the hash rate that's going to move from Ethereum to other coins? What do you think will happen regarding the hash power, and where will it go?
Well, I think most of those projects that are still GPU mineable will get a kind of boost in hash rate. And that will be a kind of challenging time, but with chances for all the sides. You need to see, if you collect all of the other GPU mineable coins today, like Ethereum Classic, Raven, Ergo, Beam, certainly missed some now, doesn't matter, Ziliqua. If you collect all of their hash rates and compare it with ETH, you recognize, okay, we're only at 20, maybe 30%. So there will be a lot of inflowing hash rate. So in the beginning, I guess we will see difficulty rising quite a lot. Certainly some miners turning off. But also it could give a boost to the coins itself, because I'm a big fan of the theory that the price of coins kind of is made in a similar way as with a social network. Yeah, you understand, when you've got a social network and you're all alone there, then it's kind of worthless. Yeah, what should I do with Instagram when I'm the only person there? It isn't really interesting. Yeah. Same with Facebook or TikTok. The more people you've got in that, the more value it gains. Yeah, and I mean, it kind of works. If we wouldn't have crypto, I wouldn't know you guys, for example. Yeah. So also, I see this crypto scene as a kind of a network of social networks. So, and miners are often kind of the first and the last believers in your project, at least if it fails, the last believers, but also kind of the first. Yeah, they kind of give you credit. They take your currency in hand and trade it, and so they're moving it. Yeah, after the developers. So for those smaller projects, it could be a kind of chance having all these miners jumping on, and maybe they gain attention then. Ethereum certainly has outgrown that phase. Yeah, there's so many projects running on the Ethereum chain today. They will be okay with losing their miners, I guess. But for the smaller projects, it really can be a chance. And so I see the mining scene, well, they will go through harder times, much harder times, but it won't be as bad as it could be. That's kind of my prediction. Yeah.
Yep, and probably not as long as people think it will be once things start moving to different networks.
I also think that there could be some few new projects, some hype projects launching exactly that time, waiting for this spot to grab some extra attention.
Most likely, yeah.
I guess there will be some projects having something in the pipeline exactly for that moment to catch the miners, to give them a new home, and kind to rocket start the knowledge about these new projects, because people will then actively search for new projects.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, they're looking to move it, and just being there at the right time.
Maybe just a word about for miners. I think the NiceHash will be the most used service then, seriously, because it will utilize a lot of coins. You know, there will be, like, imagine 5 coins being quite equally profitable, and then you have to change between all of these coins manually. You know, you have to start mining Ergo, you have to start mining Raven because it's more profitable right now, and then you have 5 different wallets. Then you have to take care of all of these wallets. But with NiceHash, you just connect to one stratum, you leave it running, and everything is taken care of. I think that's a very good service.
It definitely is also a chance for your operations, of course, because you're kind of acting like a balancer, for all those networks, balancing the profitability, so it all balances out to a certain level. Yeah. Actually, to get the right attention, it would be better for the projects if people were not using NiceHash in that moment. So people get this coin actively in their hand. But it will both happen, I guess. Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on some different algorithms? Like, for example, Autolycos, it's quite popular with miners and gaining a lot of traction. What are your thoughts about it and Ergo in general? It offers quite similar functionality to Ethereum.
Sorry, what exactly were you asking? What project?
Autolycos and Ergo.
Autolycos and Ergo. Well, yeah, Ergo reminds me quite a lot. But it reminds me on the project I'm myself still involved in. Yeah. So for transparency, I'm still a member of the Beam Foundation. Both projects have in common they've got very, very ambitious roadmaps, but also not only ambitious, but also they on the Ergo side they've got checked a lot of boxes already, so they really stick to it and successfully implement their stuff. Very active team. That's what I like a lot about Ergo. So there are good chances. I think for both projects also there's small downside in what I told before about the networks. There are not so many projects today that nearly need to run an own chain. Yeah, they're trying to be another platform for new assets. Problem is, a lot of interesting assets already have set on a platform. Yeah, so they will go through a time. Okay, we somehow need to attract some new lighthouse projects that jump on. Yeah, so they can outgrow the mining phase. It will be interesting. It is technically it's a great project, and in my opinion, highly undervaluated. Yeah, I guess it's now somewhere in the top 200, 300, something around that.
Yeah, something like that.
And well, if you look into that, it has much more technical substance than many top 100 projects have. Yeah, so definitely it would kind of deserve to be there. But yeah, we need some people picking it up first. Maybe also that mining boom, that can be a chance. With regard to the proof of work algorithm, it is kind of nice to mine. I like it to mine because it doesn't need that much power on the GPU. Yeah, so people can, with similar overclocks, rather easily switch their configuration without having the problem that you had, for example, on Raven the early days. Yeah, when they started with this ProcPo. We had some people really burning their cables because this proof of work needs more energy than the old one that you don't have with Autolycus. Yeah, what is a little bit down is I mentioned the access size of the data set before, and this is only 32 bytes there. So we don't utilize the full bandwidth the memory could have. Yeah, and that of course opens the door for a kind of specialized chips. And it's also the creation of this data set Ergo is accessing to what in NiceHash would be the DEC. That involves a lot of Blake to be compute operations. And so it is different to NiceHash. It would be possible to trade this memory access for a lot of Blake to be calculations. And if I look back to the old discrete miners, for example, yeah, that did Blake to be and their capacities back in 2018, 2019, when that was a kind of hype. In theory, when you do the full trade, give away all the memory and instead do the compute, then these devices would be able to mine at about 100 mega hash on the Ergo chain. So if Ergo really gets successful, it could be we see also ASICs there sooner or later. Good for the network, not so good for me.
Let's hope. Speaking of ASICs, what makes ASIC mining different than GPU mining? Apart from the hardware itself, of course.
Well, but the hardware is an important point here. On a GPU can kind of run any program you give to it, that you can code for it. You're much more restricted there with an ASIC. Because there's no actually programming it in that sense. Yeah, it's all more or less fixed function. And let's say the FPGA domain is kind of intermediate step in between, where you have something you can actually code, but then you have a compile time like 2 days or so until you get all the elements set right. Yeah. You're more fixed on the function, and also when you create it, it's less coding, it's more designing it, because you physically need to place memory, physically need to say, okay, here I want this part of the ALU or stuff like that. So it is quite different in itself. It's in the end it does the same job, but yeah. Coding it, designing it is quite different, at least in the skills you need. Well, some are equal, of course. Yeah, the thinking in algorithms, that's still the same, and most optimization step can be transported. But for example, what is code length in a GPU code is then suddenly space on the chip. So you will set a different focus then. For example, using as few space as anyhow possible to place as much logical units as possible on the same chip, yeah, to gain more speed out of one chip. And that's different to a GPU, where it doesn't really matter if you do the code twice as long, but 0.1% faster, then that's likely the way you will go. Yeah. So
Thanks.
So yeah, let's talk a bit more about the future of mining. We see a lot of changes geographically, certainly since in the last year, especially. How do you see that changing in terms of hotspots for mining? We see a lot more miners in Europe recently. Do you think this is a trend that's going to continue?
Yeah, we saw a lot of miners now leaving China for quite obvious reasons. I guess there are two chances kind of for Europe when it comes to mining. The one is mining more and more gets a business. Yeah? In the beginning, it was more the people running the miners at home. Now it is a business. But when you run a business, you need to rely on the environment allowing your business. Yeah, and I think indeed the political stability we have here in Europe is a kind of a factor that gives a boost to it, because, well, maybe you're kind of giving up to 3, 4, 5% of your profit, but therefore can be certain you can continue running what you're currently running for a while. This kind of stability obviously helps Europe. The other thing is the trend going towards more green energy, because we recently saw that energy gained from coal gets more and more expensive, burning it. And Europe is quite far ahead of the rest of the world when it comes to pushing green energy. So before, here in Europe, we had this big drawback that the energy for mining is much too expensive. And well, this now, it is still expensive here, but it's leveling much more out than before. Well, additionally, right now we're having this bull run in the whole crypto market. Almost all coins are up when you look on the yearly base, and up quite a lot. Of course, that helps high energy priced countries like we have here in Europe. When we get back into a bear market and ETH going to proof of stake, there might be we will see some bounce back to
the cheapest
to China and Russia, just because, well, your margin is smaller then. Yeah, and so energy.
At the end of the day, there's a profit, and you're mining for profits.
Yeah, and energy price will then be more a topic then. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk about LolMiner future. Will you add other algorithms or focus on perfecting the current ones? As you previously said, you're currently focusing on LHR.
Yeah, right.
But what?
Right now, it makes absolute sense to perfecting the current codes more. I've got a quite long bucket list of stuff I wanted to do and want to try out, and so I think we will see some of that stuff now in the near future happening. But then when it comes to next spring, I likely start testing out other algorithms and somehow to diversify myself if I want my own business to continue after Ethereum is moving. So then I will certainly add the one or other new algorithm there.
I think LolMiner doesn't support Ravencoin, right?
Yeah. Not yet.
That's one that should be on your list.
Certainly, yeah.
So are you following the latest Intel announcements? There's some interesting things happening there for the future with the InnoSilicon.
Into InnoSilicon. Well, of course, I'm following that. I wouldn't do my job well when I wouldn't. Actually, I tried to get my hands on some Intel testing cards, but have not arrived any yet. I think, the moment they are kind of available, there will be also a demand for mining software running on it. And since I've got some OpenCL background and both of the cards will be OpenCL compatible, I certainly will give them a try. The inner silicon announcement kind of did surprise me. I heard of that already last year, but then was surprised. Okay, it's now actually going to be a real product. Still not sure when the market entry actually will happen. I guess there was nothing about that in the recent announcement, just the pictures and the rough parameters of the cards. When it comes to mining, they look like very low power GPUs, but with a decent performance without overclocking, without having memory hacks. I would assume about 35 to 40 mega hash. And there would be something, okay, well, why not? If they're cheap enough, they will be bought. And
if there's stock, that's the most important.
Exactly.
If there is stock, yeah.
Yeah, that's
maybe
a general problem. Right now, you can kind of sell any graphic cards.
Yeah. Maybe just for our users, there are two new companies starting to manufacture GPUs. One is InnoSilicon. It's mostly known for ASICs right now, and Intel, of course, will start making GPUs again. Actually, they I think made one in early 2000s, something like that.
Yeah, and then they got some experience with integrated GPUs, but now entering also the gaming market. As far as I know, Intel also the head of Intel's GPU facility before was an AMD guy.
So, he's a Ruji, something like that.
Yeah,
his name is.
Something like that. I'm not as certain as well, but
another interesting thing is that InnoSilicon named its GPU after Intel founder. It's called Moore's Law, something like that.
Okay.
And this guy Morse, just Google it later. He founded Intel, and the law is the law about like he said that there will be the chip performance will double each 2 years, something like that.
That guy,
yeah, that guy.
I recall, yeah. So
what's your okay, you already talked about supporting these GPUs.
Yeah, and I think it applies to both. When I can get my hands on, I'll certainly write a code. Yeah, but at the moment, it's also manufacturers are not that open to give away samples at the moment. Yeah, it was a little bit different when I started. For example, in what was that? 2018? Was it 2018? No, 2019, when Beam and Grin started, and Sapphire did release this 16 gigabyte RX 570. I just asked them if they could handle me over one, and they actually did. I was surprised about that, but at the moment, InnoSilicon and Intel are not that responsive, unfortunately.
Just to let you know, the Sapphire made another mining GPU now called G Pro X080.
Yeah, this what is in fact a kind of AMD chip on it. Yeah, it's pretty similar properties to RX 5700
to 6700.
Yeah,
6700.
Okay,
it's very similar to that one.
A good card can be run at very low voltages. I like that. Very energy efficient. Yeah.
So some more things to play with.
I think we could go on for like an hour.
Certainly.
But
we're already over time now.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Maybe next time.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us. It's been really interesting to talk with you, hear about LolMiner and all the projects. Definitely look forward to speak to you again sometime. But yeah, that's all we have time for.
Thank you guys very much. Thanks very much for the invite, and I hope if we have the chance to talk again, that then this whole pandemic is over and I could just set myself into the car and join you over there.
Of course.
So
yeah, you're welcome here.
That would be kind of great things, doing the same we're doing now, but all sitting on the same couch side by side.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, look
Anyways.
forward to that. Great. So so thanks everyone for joining us today. This was NiceTalk, and we're talking here with a developer from LolMiner. And LolMiner, of course, is included in NiceHash Miner. So if you haven't tried it already, then make sure you head over to our website and check it out. And that's all for today, and we'll see you all next time on the next episode.